What is up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Fantasy Fellow Show. My name's Kyle. It is Monday evening. We have two Monday night football games on, so we'll hopefully have a few things going on where you either win or you move on to the playoffs. Whatever you need tonight, Vikings, Bears, and the Raiders and the Falcons. It's kind of whatever. Not my favorite games, but we will be monitoring those games. If you guys are new to the Fantasy Fellowship, I'm going to be going over my post-game notes in this video where we look at everything that happened yesterday, and we'll look at the Thursday night game as well, and we'll give you guys the snap counts, the routes run, and just the fantasy data and the box scores that help us just make decisions going forward. And then at the very end, we'll take a sneak peek here at the waiver wire. So if you guys are interested in seeing what my waiver wire column looks like for Week 16, stay tuned to the very end. Let's hop right into it. Weird Thursday night football game. Rams 12, 49ers 6. Not much to note here of any significance. Obviously, no touchdowns in this game was kind of weird, but Kupp, gets a goose egg, 0 receptions, 3 targets. He still ran all the routes and snaps, though, so this is just an outlier based on what he's been playing so well the last month and a half or two. So this is just a weird game here. It all went to Puka, 7 for 97. There was elements of weather and just weird stuff in this game here. So I'm not overly concerned about Cooper Kupp. I'm going to start him against the Jets in week number 16. But overall, the usage here for the Rams, everything looks good. Kieran Williams still the bell cow, 29 carries. Blake Corum only gets 3. Dominated the snaps, dominated the routes. Everything looks good here. Although I will say Blake Corum continues to look good as the handcuff here. So if he's lingering around, it's week 16, 17. If Kieran were to get hurt, we're starting Blake Corum at this point. So snag Corum. We're not interested in the tight ends here. Colby Parkinson does seem to have the job back, but we're seeing that Tyler Higbee might be joining the Rams in week number 12, which could, I'm not saying to start Tyler Higbee or pick him up or anything, but it will be good for the offense if he does come in and look good. So nothing really concerning for the Rams or anything that changed for the Rams. The 49ers, on the other hand, we have just the bottoming out of the 49ers this season. Brock Purdy couldn't do much, 14 of 31 as a passer, 142 yards. He threw an interception. Just absolutely nothing going with this weather. Juwan Jennings, 2 receptions for 31 yards on 9 targets. He's still a wide receiver 2-3 in fantasy. Keep starting him, but I think we could probably shut Deebo down. 3 for 16 on 7 targets, just not cutting it. I don't have any faith in Deebo Samuel, especially in week 16. If you're in the final 4, I don't really want to risk starting Deebo Samuel in my lineups. It just has not been good for a number of weeks now. And keep starting George Kittle. He's the one receiving weapon that I'm like, yes, keep starting George Kittle, tight end. Need those tight end points. And then Isaac Guerendo, despite coming off of what appeared to be a foot sprain, he played well. 16 for 57, not the best rushing line, but he did add 4 for 18 as a running back, 11.5 total PPR points. We're going to keep starting Guerendo. You're going to keep starting Kittle. I think Purdy's going to get pushed to a QB2 for me, so a super flex guy. And then I'm probably going to keep Juwan Jennings as a wide receiver 2-3. But we're moving on from Deebo. You guys can let Ricky Pearsall go in a redraft if you need it. So we're going to figure out the 49ers a little bit more this week here, but we're starting to lose our trust in fantasy. Chiefs-Browns here. A lot of this game was not great. Mahomes, obviously, with the high ankle sprain, not sure. I'm assuming he's not going to play this coming Saturday, week 16, so we're going to look at Carson Wentz. But the usage, remains really, really strong here for Xavier Worthy. He's actually the one that I'm going to probably start ranking Worthy ahead of DeAndre Hopkins. He's looking like the guy that I would rather have. Just the targets are there, the carries are there, and he's starting to stack a lot of nice days together. So Worthy looks like the wide receiver that I would rather have for the rest of the season. You have Justin Watson, whatever, Juju Smith-Schuster, whatever. And then Hopkins, he didn't play a lot of snaps in this one. Now, they didn't need him to, but it is concerning to see him 4th in snaps and routes. He did get 6 targets, though, 5 for 36. That's a floor game, whatever. But I'm starting to see Worthy become more consistent and trustworthy than Hopkins, even though Hopkins has, the big play upside, but Worthy has just as big of play upside, if not more. Travis Kelce, floor game here, 4 for 27 and 8 targets. It's Noah Gray, who at this point, if you need tight end help, you might as well just stream Noah Gray. Now, it's different because if no Patrick Mahomes, I'm not super excited about this passing offense. So we're going to have to wait and evaluate the Chiefs later in the week when we get some answers. And then the running backs here, they split Pacheco and Kareem Hunt basically 50-50 down the middle. They both had 28 snaps. They both had 13 carries. We're looking at nine routes for Pacheco and 12 for Kareem Hunt. Not really exciting. They're trying to keep Pacheco healthy. They don't want to give him too big of a workload right away. These guys are, they're thinking Super Bowl run. So they're not going to give Pacheco 20 plus touches, I think, anytime soon. But if Carson Wentz is the QB this weekend, we might see a heavy RB approach with Pacheco and Kareem Hunt. I think they're both kind of low-end RB2 flex plays going into week 16. And then again, with Mahomes, we'll have to monitor his practice reports, but I'm going to lean towards him not being in, and that could change a lot of my thoughts on Chiefs players. The Browns, it's really ugly, guys. Nick Chubb broke his foot, so Jerome Ford was the lead back, and Chubb kind of sucked. Like in the second half, man, he had the fumble, he had a couple bad plays in a row, and broke his foot on the one fumble. Just not looking good here. Jerome Ford will be a starting running back for fantasy week 16 and 17, and they got to figure out who their quarterback is, whether it's Winston or DTR. I don't have a lot of faith in DTR. If it is Dorian Thompson-Robinson, not excited about Jerry Jeudy. Judy's going to move down to like wide receiver 3 flex. If it's Winston, I'm going to keep starting Jeudy. We'll see if Cedric Tillman gets back here, but I think going into week 16, you can start Jerry Jeudy if it is DTR, but just be advised that it's not going to be as good as it's been with Jameis Winston. And then honestly, I think, Jerome Ford just might be the guy that just gets there on volume and gets a bunch of touches, even though it's not going to be a great stat line. Not excited about my Chiefs or my Browns. And if Njoku's back, that does help DTR a little bit, but we have a lot to figure out here with Cleveland. It's not looking good, the final stretch here. Bengals 37, Titans 27. Not much to learn here. It's still Chase, and we did see Yoshibas play a good amount of snaps and routes as he has been, but he's just not really a guy that gets a lot of targets and can do a lot with his targets. So you're still starting Chase. You're still starting Higgins. It was nice to see Mike Gesicki get involved early, but they didn't really go back to him. He's still their lead tight end in terms of routes and targets and things like that. They kind of scaled back Tanner Hudson, which I thought was weird. But we're not relying. If you're starting Mike Gesicki, I don't think that's the smartest play out there for you. And it continues to be Chase Brown just dominating this backfield. They're not even trying to use Khalil Herbert. He got 1 carry, 3 snaps, whatever. Start your. We know the Bengals, man. You're starting Burrow. You're starting Chase Brown. You're starting Jamar Chase. You're starting T. Higgins, and then stay the hell away from everybody else there. I don't really want to be caught starting Titans, I think, in week 16. Tajay Spears, though, comes out of nowhere and gets 2 touchdowns, heavy usage day in the receiving column, did get a few carries in the goal line touchdown, which was nice. And then Tony Pollard, man, weird day for Tony Pollard, 17 carries for 45 yards. We love the carries, but the yards per carry is not great. Did get a touchdown in there, and then just nothing in the receiving game. Even though Mason Rudolph dropped back 26 times, Will Levis got hurt, dropped back 12 times. A lot of passing attempts, just nothing for Tony Pollard. So maybe Tajay Spears is a deep RB2 flex. I think you can keep starting Tony Pollard. They do play the Colts next weekend, which excites me. So I'm kind of interested in the running game. I'm assuming Mason Rudolph's going to be the starting QB. I think if you play in super flex leagues, maybe he's worth a look in super deep QB leagues. And then, I don't know, I'm not bothering with Nick Westbrook-Ikhine. We know the numbers are not great when he doesn't score a touchdown. And it's week 16, fantasy final 4, man. I don't really want to start any Titan if I have to. I guess Calvin Ridley is it. Don't want to mess with Chigo Konko. I will note, though, I think Mason Rudolph does elevate some of these guys. The tight ends caught a lot of fantasy points, but trying to stay away from Tennessee if I can. The Commanders, a team that we need to figure out. They're going to have a fun game here against Philadelphia in week 16. Jaden Daniels remains a must-start fantasy player, obviously. And then the running back rotation, without Austin Eckler, it's Brian Robinson playing a lot of the snaps, 58 out of 78 total snaps, running a lot of routes too. He's kind of the lead receiving back as well as the lead running back. So he looks like a really strong top 15 running back to play against Philadelphia. I'm going to fire Brian Robinson up. I had hopes for Jeremy McNichols to get more in the receiving column and maybe just take over Austin Eckler's role completely, but that did not materialize. So McNichols, not really a guy I'm thinking about starting. And then Chris Rodriguez is purely an injury handcuff for Brian Robinson Jr. We did get an injury to Zach Ertz. He left with a concussion, and then they just gave pretty much all the work to Ben Sinnott, which was nice. They still use John Bates. They've been using him all year as the number 2 tight end, but they basically just flipped in Ben Sinnott, let him run as many routes as he can handle. And if you're desperate for tight end, maybe Ben Sinnott could be the guy this weekend against Philadelphia. Not feeling great about that. We just don't have a lot of, previous experience with Sanat in fantasy numbers. So if he is starting, though, I think it's open to a potential tight end one spot. And then Terry McLaurin, that's really it. 7 for 73 and 2 touchdowns. Dyami Brown is the wide receiver 2. If you're in a desperate situation, you need a deep wide receiver 3 or flex. Dyami Brown's who I would play. 3 for 30 on 4 targets. They do use Zacchaeus. Jamison Crowder got in there too, but it doesn't, as good as the Commanders are, man, there's just not a lot of mouths that I want to put in my fantasy lineup. It's Terry, it's Brian Robinson, it's Jane Daniels, and then I'm probably going to punt the rest. The Saints are starting to really just break down. Don't think we're going to get Alvin Kamara in week 16. So Kendre Miller will be the guy to get the bell cow touches. He did get 9 carries for 46 yards. He's been the team's lead running back the last 2 games. So Kendre Miller against Green Bay, week 16 might be the guy you're adding off waiver wires or starting as your RB2 flex. Don't know who the quarterback is going to be, whether it's Rattler. I don't think it's Haener. I think he got hurt. Rattler had to come back in. It could be Derek Carr, but honestly, I don't think you need to worry about the Saints in week 16, man. Sure, MVS could be a deep flex against his former team. You're not starting Kevin Austin, Dante Pettis, any of these junk receivers. You can maybe think about one of the tight ends, but even then, it doesn't really feel good. I think just ignoring the Saints completely, with the exception of Kendre Miller, is probably where I'm going to be at. So just look away. The Saints, man, it's time to put the Saints away for 2025. Ravens 35, Giants 14. Not much to learn here. The Ravens just threw the hell out of the ball in this one, and Derrick Henry just didn't really need to do much. 14 carries, 67 yards. They did a lot of their damage with big plays from Lamar. Justice Hill remains the RB2, looked good catching the ball. Rasheen Ali was the RB3 in this one. The receiver pecking order remains Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman locked into 2 wide receiver sets. In this game, they ran a lot of their 2 tight end stuff. So Likely and Andrews both played 39 snaps. That's pretty much the formation they stayed in all game. So not much to learn here from the Ravens. Deontay Johnson has been excused from the team this week, so he's probably done with the Ravens. So continue starting Flowers, Mandrews, Derrick Henry, Lamar. You can consider Rashad Bateman as a wide receiver 3 flex. The New York Giants are another team that I just really don't want anything to do with. Malik Neighbors came through. He's really the only one that I think I'm going to leave in my lineups for the final 4. Wan'Dale Robinson's a deep wide receiver 3 flex if you need a PPR spot. You can maybe think about Daniel Bellinger. Tim Boyle came in for Tommy DeVito. He might be starting next week. I don't know if Drew Lock's going to be back. So we're going to have to watch the Giants practice reports and see what's going on here. Tyrone Tracy gets the bulk of the work, but Singletary gets the goal line touchdown. They split the carries 10-8. I don't even know if I want to play Tyrone Tracy in week 16. It's just kind of a shitty situation for the Giants. Play Malik Neighbors, guys. I don't know if I want to be fishing for any other Giants points here. We have to figure out who the quarterback is yet. Cowboys 30, Panthers 14. Good game from Cooper Rush. 18 for 29, 214 yards and 3 touchdowns. He did add some yards here. He did fumble a ball, but probably one of his better fantasy lines as a passer. He opened things up for everybody here. CeeDee Lamb was the biggest beneficiary, 9 for 116 and a touchdown, 13 targets. I think if you have CeeDee Lamb, you're feeling good about him being a top 5, top 10 fantasy wide receiver again here in the final 4. Brandon Cooks continues to run the number 2 routes and snaps, but I just don't really want him in my lineups. 3 for 34. Sure, he could catch a random touchdown, but I don't think the ceiling in the big play is worth it. He's a flex option for you. Jalen Tolbert does step down to wide receiver 3, but if it's not CeeDee Lamb, I'm not starting a Cowboys receiver. And then the tight end situation, it's back to Ferguson, but 2 for 23. Kind of a fringe tight end 1 option, if you will. I do like him this weekend, though, because the Cowboys are going to play Tampa Bay, and that game could be a nice passing opportunity for Cooper Rush again. So maybe Brandon Cooks in deeper spots. I think Ferguson, tight end 1 option for you. And then it's the Rico Dowdle show, man. 3 straight games, over 100 rushing yards. He's leading the league in rushing yards in the last 3 weeks. No receiving targets in this one, which is a little unfortunate. He still gets 14.9 points. Maybe gets a touchdown and some receptions next week to boost him, but he's kind of becoming like a top 15 running back in fantasy. So if you have Rico Dowdle, you're finding a way to get him in. And then Cooper Rush, not quite a QB1, maybe if you're in a desperate situation, but he's for sure a super flex starter. The Panthers, Chuba Hubbard got the bell cow role. It didn't really come out to fantasy points here as they just got behind and they couldn't really establish the run. So we saw 28 Bryce Young dropbacks. Young continues to look good in this kind of second life after he got benched. And then it was Adam Thielen, 7 targets, 5 for 51. Jalen Coker steps in. I believe Xavier Legette is going to be out probably the rest of the season with his wrist injury. And Jalen Coker comes in, gets the big play for a touchdown. He's going to continue to get snaps and routes out there. And the pecking order should be Coker, Thielen, David Moore. That's the wide receiver 3s next week. Really, all 3 of those guys are worth a spot in your lineup. But I think Adam Thielen as your wide receiver 3 makes the most sense. You can think about Coker and Moore in deeper spots. I don't really want to mess with the tight ends. I'm glad Sanders is back and playing well after that neck injury, but we're just not going to start a tight end here. So you can play Chuba, you can play Thielen, you can maybe think about Young in super flex leagues, but that's probably not the best situation. And then Coker, David Moore is a deep wide receiver 3 flex. Jets 32, Jags 25. Whatever, the Jets, you can think about Aaron Rodgers here. He had the best fantasy line that he's had in a while. He had 45 rushing yards in this too. So maybe he's a QB1 next week against the Rams. They're just trying to play good football at this point and go out with the positive note. You're starting Wilson, you're starting Devontae Adams. Allen Lazard is the clear wide receiver 3, but he's just a desperation wide receiver 3. You're hoping for a touchdown there. Who cares about the Jets tight end? And then we have a 3-way committee here, although I think Braylon Allen got hurt, which led to Isaiah Davis playing more as the RB2. But it doesn't look like we have freaky Breece Hall running back 1 usage anymore for the rest of the year. I think they're going to maintain him and limit his touches as, they're playing for 2025. No reason to get Breece Hall hurt here at the end of the year. So I like Isaiah Davis as a pickup here in fantasy, especially if Braylon Allen's going to be out this week. Look at Davis in the waiver wire on either, tomorrow night's run or Wednesday night's run for you. Breece Hall's just an RB2 for me. I don't feel great about it, but the Jets do have some life here as they're kind of playing spoiler for some. The Jags, Brian Thomas, man, he is a guy that probably a 2nd or 3rd round fantasy pick next year. He looks like he could be a breakout superstar waiting for us as he's breaking out right now. Nothing else to say. You're starting Brian Thomas if you have him. Mac Jones, man, 31 for 46, 294 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 picks, which is a little messy, but he adds 29 yards on the ground to help that. Good game, man. They looked fun. They had some moments on offense here. Brenton Strange also stepping in for Evan Ingram, 11 receptions, 12 targets for 73 yards. Like if you need a tight end, that's your tight end that you go pick up off the waiver wire. Mac Jones looks comfortable throwing to Thomas Jr. and Brenton Strange. Parker Washington and Devin Duvernay are the number 2, number 3 receivers, but I'm not going to recommend starting either of those guys. And then the running backs here, ETN looked good, 14 for 65. He's going to get the receiving work. And then Tank Bigsby, man, 11 for 42. They're going to continue to get him double-digit carries, but just no touchdowns in this one. He's boom bust, touchdown dependent. I think both guys are RB2 flex plays this weekend in Week 16 against the Raiders. So a little bit of hope there from the Jags guys if you're using some of them in the Final Four. Texans 20, Dolphins 12. Not much to learn here. We did get Joe Mixon they kind of hip drop tackled him. So we're going to watch his ankle reports this week. He might be in jeopardy of missing this game on Saturday, but what an ugly game here. This was one of the more boring games. CJ Stroud was 18 for 26, 131 yards. He did throw 2 touchdowns, but not a lot of juice in this game here. For Texans, you're starting Nico Collins and you're starting Joe Mixon. And I think that's the end of the list. Tank Dell, not really a guy I want in my lineups. And then CJ Stroud, just not anywhere near a QB1 starter yet. So the Texans, I like them, but just for fantasy, we're a little underwhelmed. And then the Dolphins, man, a complete shitting of the bed here from the Dolphins. Like they could have easily won this game. Tua just had a really bad day with turnovers and getting pressured and a fumble here. Tyreek Hill, even though Jalen Waddle got hurt, Tyreek Hill couldn't have a big game, 2 for 36. It was all Jonnu, just dink off and dump offs to Jonnu and Devon Achane. So for the Dolphins, keep starting your Achane and your Jonnu and your Tyreek. We'll see if Jalen Waddle can play in Week 16. And then I still like Tua as a fringe QB1 option for sure in Superflex leagues, but just the bottom dropping out here for the Dolphins. This was absolutely one of the worst games at the worst times for them. And a lot of people left behind in the dust here for fantasy if you started Tyreek or Waddle. So tough game. Broncos 31, Colts 13. I'm not going to spend too much time on this one. Bo Nix is good. Threw 3 interceptions. He's still a QB1 option. He's for sure QB2 in Superflex leagues. And then it's really Cortland Sutton. I don't even want to think about Devon Vele, Troy Franklin, any of these garbage receivers the tight ends, cool. They caught touchdowns, but I'm not gambling with that. And then honestly, this running back is the running back room's a joke. Like they're just splitting this 3 different ways, getting touches for everybody here. Nothing is useful for fantasy except Sutton and Bo Nix. And then the Colts. This is also kind of a bit of a joke here. Anthony Richardson, sure, if you have him in Superflex leagues, they did kind of scold Jonathan Taylor after he did the fumble end zone touchdown thing. He had a good day running the ball, 22 for 107, but he fumbles going into the end zone, kind of a big play in the game. Michael Pittman Jr. looks good as the number 1, 6 for 58 on 9 targets. Josh Downs, nice to see the 8 targets, but only 3 for 32. You can maybe flex those guys, wide receiver 3 flexes. Who cares about the tight ends? You can start Jonathan Taylor. And then I believe Alec Pierce had a concussion, which led to more AD Mitchell. But honestly, the Colts, man, not really excited about getting Colts in my fantasy lineups for the Final Four. The Bills, 48, the Lions, 42. A lot of stupid garbage time stuff here as, just, man, Dan Campbell is going to get himself in trouble one of these games in the playoffs, going for 4th downs and just a quick onside kick to begin the 4th quarter basically just lit gasoline on this game here and just exploded it even to more scoring points for both sides. But the Bills, man, you're starting a lot of these guys here. Josh Allen is he is a treat right now. He's going to win you a fantasy championship if you got Josh Allen into the playoffs. James Cook, too. He could be a guy that wins you a championship. They play the Patriots this week 16, so you're going to like what you get from your Bills. Start James Cook, start Josh Allen. Good to see Dalton Kincaid back here, still running behind Dawson Knox in terms of snaps and routes, but he did have a team-high lead with targets for 4 for 43 or 4 for 53 and 7 targets. And then Shakir, you're starting Khalil Shakir. At this point, I'm not trusting Amari Cooper. 0 targets in this game where there's 34 dropbacks. Not trusting Cooper. Coleman's an interesting guy, though. He could be maybe trusted for a deep play if he needs somebody as a wide receiver 3 flex, but it's purely Josh Allen and James Cook. And I can think about Kincaid, a little bit of Shakir. Overall, though, concerned about these Bills other players here, whether it's Cooper, Coleman, Mac Hollins, some of the running backs here. There's just not enough consistency there. But I will say Ty Johnson, if you need somebody, maybe Ty Johnson could be your RB2 flex, especially if you lost David Montgomery this weekend. He tore his MCL. We're going to get the Jahmyr Gibbs show, guys, for week 16 and 17. So if you have Jahmyr Gibbs in the fantasy playoffs, you might have the RB1. Like, I'm probably going to rank Jahmyr Gibbs as my RB1 this week. So congrats there. Jared Goff, man, the Lions got punked in this game. They were down fast and furious, and they basically just abandoned the run. This is one of the worst running stat lines you're going to see from the Lions all year, if not in the last few seasons. And Goff had to throw the ball 60 times, 500 yards, 5 touchdowns. It was impressive looking at the numbers, but just the product of the game was not impressive for Detroit. You had 18 targets for Amon-Ra, a lot of dump-offs below to Sam Laporta and the running backs here. Lions, man, no more David Montgomery. The defense is getting hit. For fantasy, this is good. They have a pretty bad defense. They might have to keep scoring a lot of points here to stay ahead here as the number 1 seed. But you're starting Amon-Ra. You can keep starting Jameson Williams, start your Laporta. Don't have to tell you to start Jahmyr Gibbs, but maybe Tim Patrick gets more involved here. He's been playing well for the last 2 or 3 games, and then Goff, fringe QB1. But the Lions, good fantasy team, but it's starting to look a little curious now as we get into the real playoffs. Eagles 27, Steelers 13. Nothing to learn here from the Eagles. It's Devonta, it's A.J. Brown, it's Saquon, it's Jalen Hurts. Saquon did get hurt. He was able to return in this one, and I thought Kenneth Gainwell looked good. If you want to snag Kenneth Gainwell for the next couple of weeks, I think that's fine, but nothing really to learn here. Calcaterra is still the tight end 1, but he's just not a guy we're going to use in fantasy. You have the Steelers, no George Pickens, and they got problems throwing the ball. 128 passing yards from Russell Wilson. The running game was a joke. Nothing from Warren or Najee Harris this game. I think I'm willing to just write off for the Steelers. If Pickens is back, you're going to start him next week. I think you can. It's against the Ravens, so I want to get Pickens in the lineup against the Ravens defense. You can maybe start Pat Freiermuth as a tight end 1, and then start Jaylen Warren and Najee Harris. They should be fine in a bounce-back game against the Ravens, and then Russell Wilson more of a QB2 for Superflex. Cardinals 30, Patriots 17. James Conner, he's a baller, 30.8 fantasy points. You're starting him next week for sure. But Kyler Murray, I I don't know if we need to start Kyler Murray every week. And if he's your QB1, you might have better options out there. It's this Cardinals offense has not been impressive. It's been very up and down. I'm starting James Conner and Trey McBride, even Marvin Harrison Jr. Like, they just don't have a good plan for him lately. He seems to be a guy that they don't really allow him to do a lot of things. 6 targets, 2 for 32. I want to see him evolve next year. So he's a wide receiver 3 flex. I'm not excited about this passing game. There's a lot of dinking and dunking to the running backs and Trey McBride. Start your Trey McBride, start your James Conner. Harrison's just a flex, and I think Kyler Murray's just a QB2 for super flex this week. The Patriots, Drake May is fine, man. He keeps finding ways to get into the end zone and put up enough fantasy stats and garbage time here to be a QB2 for super flex leagues. But otherwise, like, Ramondre Stevenson's just a running back 2 flex. He splits time with Gibson. Gibson still looks good. He's not a guy I'm starting, but he does look good as a running back 2 in real life. And then the receivers, man, it's just kind of roulette here, whether it's Booty, Douglas, Bourne, even Hunter Henry and Austin Hooper, man. I'm not really excited about a lot of the Patriots here. So if you're starting a Patriot in the final 4, like, I'd be shocked if you got that far with these guys as your options, but just leave it to Drake May in super flex leagues. Buccaneers 40, Chargers 17. Just a romping here. Baker Mayfield just keep doing what he's doing all year long. He's a QB1, man. He's a top 5, top 10 quarterback for the next couple weeks here. Bucky and Rashad White, I think both guys are starting RB2s in fantasy. K. Dotton, we're kind of done with K. Dotton. He's not startable now that Mike Evans is back. You're starting Mike Evans, and then back-to-back weeks here for Jalen McMillan, looking like he could be a wide receiver 3 flex for you. The Chargers just couldn't really get anything going on the ground. Really bad numbers here from Vidal and Gus Edwards. But if you look here, Gus Edwards only 14 snaps and 2 routes. Vidal played most of this game, 35 snaps and 16 routes. He's worth picking up here down the stretch. I don't think I'm starting him, but just hold on to him, and see what happens. Maybe we use him in week 17. But this was Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston getting enough for fantasy. Josh Palmer kind of, went away. So as we enter week 16, Thursday Night Football, we got the Chargers and the Broncos. It's a tough matchup for the Chargers passing offense, but I think McConkey and QJ can be in your lineups. And then Stone Smart here, the backup tight end from Will Dissly, 5 for 50. He did lose a fumble, but he's an athletic tight end. He could be streamed if you need somebody. Overall, though, the Chargers offense just not really humming on all cylinders right now. Herbert struggled in this game. Packers 30, Seahawks 13. What a Josh Jacobs first half. The Packers really didn't get much going in the second half here, but they did their damage early and just kind of coasted. Jordan Love looks good. He's still a top 10 QB for fantasy. You're starting Josh Jacobs. And then the Packers receivers, man, Watson, Dobbs, and Reed. I think all 3 of these guys are kind of wide receiver 3 flex material right now. You can start Tucker Kraft still as your tight end 1. Big game coming up. The Packers looking to bury the Saints on Monday Night Football. You want your Packers in your lineups for week 16. And then the Seahawks, not much to learn here. Zach Charbonnet played well enough with Kenneth Walker out, but the Seahawks, man, they let 7 sacks happen in this one. Just couldn't get anything going. A lot of dinking and dunking here. Jackson Smith-Njigba was the center point of the offense, 10 for 83 on 12 targets. Packers defense just kept pressuring them and letting nothing happen downfield. Charbonnet got there with the big touchdown run. JSN got there with the volume. Geno Smith might be out. Who knows how long? They're saying it's not crazy serious with the knee injury, but he might be out a couple games. So Sam Howell's going to get some starts, maybe 1 or 2 starts here for the Seahawks. Rough game last night for Seattle. A lot of the balloon just got deflated. All the air went out for Seattle's hopes. But if you guys made it to the end here, don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you guys are new. I'm just going to mention some of my favorite ads for the waiver wire this week. We'll do a waiver wire show tomorrow night at 7 o'clock Central Time. If you guys want to hang out with me, we'll go live and talk about some of this stuff on here. If you need a QB this week, not a lot of great options. Kirk Cousins, maybe against the Giants. If he looks good tonight, that'll be an easier call. Maybe Russell Wilson at Baltimore. Baltimore's just got a bad passing defense. The Jets offense against the Rams, maybe Matthew Stafford against the Jets. I like both guys in that game. And then Cooper Rush, Sunday Night Football against Tampa Bay if you need a QB. If you need a running back this weekend, you should have already picked these guys up. Hopefully you guys have been watching my stuff and you already have these guys. But Kendre Miller, Jerome Ford, Sincere McCormick, Tajay Spears, Tank Bigsby. Receivers, these guys have been on the list for a while here. Adam Thielen, Romeo Doubs, Bateman, McMillan, QJ. Watson and Douglas. And the tight end list is new. Brenton Strange, Stone Smart, Noah Gray. Pick those guys up if you need tight end help. And then my favorite streaming defenses, these are defenses that are less than 60% rostered over on ESPN. Buffalo against New England, Packers versus New Orleans, and the Titans versus the Indianapolis Colts. So there you have the sneak peek at the waiver wire. No, those numbers are not sustainable, JSC. 198 yards and whatever 11 receptions he had, 2 touchdowns. It's simply not sustainable. It is possible, though, because, you know, those kind of numbers, while they're not sustainable for a long season, we only have 2 more weeks left. So he could maybe keep it up and play at a high note here. I will rank him as a top 10, top 12 receiver in week 16 going up against the Rams. So not sustainable, but, you know, would I be shocked if he goes out and gets another 8, 9, 10 catches and has a big game? No, but can't hope for, you know, the 200 and the 2 touchdowns again. That would be out. That'd just be crazy. So I do think he can keep it going, though. But anyways, guys, that's it for me. Check out thefantasyfellowship.com. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe if you guys are new, and we'll see you tomorrow night again, 7 p.m. Central Time, Waiver Wire Show. Have a good night. Peace. Got me feeling icy.